you would never get it off. Phrasing. You would never be able to take it apart. Better. You're going to be able to wind this hose reel up so fast. I know you're probably thinking, where's the E30 Ute? It's getting built, but I'm waiting for parts. In the meantime, we're going to turn these car parts into one of these. This is a dud, no good. Out of a old strut, brake rotor, wheel, and inner tie rod. So the first step we're going to need to do is I only need the strut. I don't need the spring, I don't need the strut top, and I don't really need the guard. So I'm just going to cut that off. I don't want to remove the wheel bearing. We've taken this apart. I've thought about it a bit, and it's a little bit more complicated than I was really hoping. I do have a solution though, and I'll try to explain why it's a little bit more complicated than I originally anticipated. Got our old reel. When you wind it up, this spins. So there's got to be something that spins and something that stays stationary. You plug this to your tap, and if I can hold it down, you can see the hose is staying still and the connection attached to the reel is spinning. I've got to make it so the connection on the inside spins with the wheel. The next step, we need to drill directly through here because the bit that spins and the bit that stays stationary needs to be in the middle of the assembly. I've got some copper tube. Once we drill it out, that can slide in, will come out the back. That can then connect to our tap, and that's stationary. This will be stationary, and I can then get one of these fittings, attach it to there, couple it on, and then it will rotate around this fitting. We need to drill this hole out. This is 12.7 diameter, so if I chuck a 13 mil drill down it, we'll be sweet. If you're following along at home, cover up your bearing. Whoops. Now that we've drilled that out, again, if you're going to do this, cover up your bearing. I'll need to re-grease that now, but our tube can go all the way through. We can now get that in, which means we can now put on our fitting to the end. All right, now that we've drilled out the strut, it's time to work out how to get the water in and the swiveling bit. I had originally gone to my local hardware supplier and bought a bunch of fittings that I thought I was gonna be able to make it work. And I could have made it work, but it would have involved brazing and going brass to copper, so I would have needed to use flux. And I thought, the swivel still wouldn't be very durable. It would eventually just leak. So I went to a proper fitting supplier. Pertec is one of the local ones we've got in Australia. And I got a full assembly of things that can just all screw together. And it is just going to be so much simpler, nicer, and neater. So I'll show you what I got and how it's going to work. So the first step was just getting a threaded rod instead of tubing. So we can place that through to the other side, and then I have a right angle to hose fitting. So I'll be able to screw that on. Already way simpler. Tap can connect directly to that. From there, this will need to be cut down. We go swivel fitting into adapter, and that's going to sit flat on there, but we'll just screw it in there for now. Then we can go right angle to hose fitting. Yeah? So now I just need to measure this, cut it, and then this will all be able to screw together, and it will still clamp it, so then none of this will move and it'll be nice and stationary. Yes. I'll clean that up and that should be good. I can tighten this all up when I am doing the final assembly and I'll put some sealant on there, but now we've got a swivel point the hose can connect to. Now that we've got all of the water functions working, I'm going to sandblast everything and then I can start welding everything together. All right, I've got my brake rotor sandblasted. I've got the strut sandblasted. I've been tossing up how I'm going to do it, and I think it is just going to be easiest if I weld one to the other. Ta-da! Then I can get this whole thing powder coated. Then we make spacers, bolt the wheel on for clearance on that doodaddy thing that I showed you, the swivel. We get the rim powder coated separately. I think I'm going to go silver, but we'll see. And then we just need to drill out and get that tie rod for the crank. There are going to be people who say, but Lewis, the brake rotor is cast and this is steel. You shouldn't weld cast. Yeah, you're right. But this is only an ornament to a certain extent. Yes, it will create weakness in the cast, but it's not under any stress. So we're all good. I'm going to weld this up. Thus, like here, spin. Pss, pss, pss. That's the hose spraying, not like it springing a leak. It's all cool now. That's all good. I've added the fittings on. It's all gonna work, but we do need to make a spacer so we've got clearance for the wheel to still bolt on and then connect to this fitting. I've ducked around to my local exhaust shop and gotten some 2.5 inch. Weld that straight onto the bearing or the wheel hub. We can cut out or notch out where this is going to attach to, and then the wheel can bolt up to that face. Let's cut this down, notch it and weld it on. I've got the angle in there. I've drilled it out in the right spot. I can do that through there and that rotates. Now, this needs to go here. We've got the wheel studs, we've got some all thread. We need to extend the studs. We've got our mostly straight studs. They're pretty close, they'll do the job. We can now see if this all works together. So you can see that it is moving the hose fitting on the inside, and that, oh, I got that, that might be an issue. Oh no. The hose fitting is very close to that threaded rod, so that might be an issue. But you can see that it spins. We've got our hose reel, we've got a new connection. We've got a new connection on the back. I've drilled the hole in the wrong spot. I should have done it in the center of the studs to hold the wheel on. So I've changed it to a barb. Picked up some hose. It's a shame to cut these crimped connectors off, but we'll cut them off, slide it onto the barb, and then we need to drill a hole and make sure all of this fits on. This is 15 meters. And then the next step would be we need to work out the handle. So we'll get the inner tie rod, so then we can crank it. But we'll get the hose on and it'll start looking more like a hose reel. The next step is to work out where we want to drill the hole, and you don't want it going straight up because then you'll just kink the hose when you roll it up. So we're going to get a nice bend in it. Out there. So now I can drill my hole, and then when we drill our hole, I am going to get a die grinder and grind a little channel in there just so it's a nice smooth transition. Get a pretty good sound out of it. This is really difficult to do on this angle. I'm going to do this off camera and then show you at the end. Kind of hard to see, but very elongated, so we can have the hose come in nice and neatly, fairly tight. The weight of the extra hose on the outside will hold it flat, and we should be good. I am going to put the rim back on because the next thing we need to do is the handle. That's 15 meters of hose, and although it could be a little bit longer, maybe another meter or two, that's looking pretty schmick. Now, I said we were going to do the handle next, but I'm going to have a slight change of plans. I've got a nozzle here, and I think we could pick up on one of these back fittings for a handle. So when you've got your handle, you can just kind of hook it up on something and then just make a little thing so you can just hang your handle on there. I think that's a pretty sick idea. All right, I'll do that, then I'll unwind it all and we can do the real handle thing. Handles! Just picked this old CV joint out of the scrap metal bin here that we've got at the workshop. I'll see if I can disassemble it. We've got our CV axle thing. I don't think I'm going to take that off. I kind of like that as a bit of a weird feature. And I think we just weld it straight to it and then have our handle just sitting there. I've checked for height and it works pretty well for just grabbing the handle. So you're probably wondering, but Lewis, how is that going to hold on? That's not going to work. Well, we get the spring we cut off the strut. If I cut a little piece off there and then weld it onto it, we'll have this nice little hook that we can hook the hose reel onto. And we're getting rid of this dang useless spring. I'll cut this off, weld that on, and then we'll do the hand reel. I know, you're all probably just going, but Lewis, can you just make the hand reel? Just be patient, we'll make the hand reel. It's looking pretty nifty though right now. I'm pretty happy with it. Pretty nifty. The last step in the build is getting this to fit into the valve hole. So then, when you're winding it up, you can rotate it around because this is a ball joint. Now let's bolt this into the rim. All right, cut, cleaned, cut. What was that? Whoops, I undid the thing in the middle. Once that's all glued together, that won't happen. While it's not glued together, that's gonna happen. I need to take everything apart, clean it all up, get it ready for powder coating, and then we can do final assembly. Zook! Howdy, if you're new to the channel, you haven't met me. I'm Office Lewis. The other guy, that's Workshop Lewis. Different people. Now in the last video, I was doing a t-shirt giveaway. One of these bad boys. So we're gonna do the t-shirt giveaway. James Dexter, leave. Them looks good. And if you follow along with the E30 Ute build, you'll kind of understand what's going on. If you don't, maybe think about checking it out. Now, I've also got another little thing. This is an M-Tech 2 385mm. I can't afford the 370 yet, but we'll get there. I'm gonna do a giveaway in my next video for this bad boy. I'll send this anywhere in the world, but you've just got to stay tuned and you do need to become a Patreon. I'm only going to be giving this away to one of my Patreon members. Check out my Patreon if you want to get possibly a cool steering wheel. I do giveaways fairly regularly, t-shirts and other stuff. Stick around, think about subscribing, and now I'll send you back to the Workshop Lewis. Cheers. Everything's back from powder coating. Everything's looking pretty schmick, so we can just start final assembly. The first thing we've got to do is get the water gizmo into it, And because of the way I've done this tubing, I've got a lock seal, which most of the joints will be on. And then I've got the Teflon tape, which will just be attached to the joint that comes out the back. And that's so it doesn't glue together, because I think if you glued that together, you would never get it off. Phrasing. You would never be able to take it apart. Better. Start gluing it all together so it's all nice and sealed and watertight. Dang it. I'm going to have to put this on after. It's just adding a little bit too much thickness to get down the hole. That's going to be tricky. Oh, no. So I've got the thread tape on there, but I need to have the thread tape on there already because this can't be protruding at all to get this on. I need some thread sealer without it being thread locker. Let me see if I can find some of that. Thread sealer, not thread locker. We want to just double check to make sure, yep, quick release goes on there, so that's all good. And then the little barb through the side. Water system set up. Now we get the rim on. And this does have to go on a certain way because of where the hole is for the hose. Meh. Pretty good, pretty good. Now we can do the handle. You're gonna be able to wind this hose reel up so fast. Now we can put, no we can't. I've put the wheel on incorrectly. Let me just fix that quickly. Now we can put the hose on. That ain't going nowhere. I cut a little bit off so I can attach that to my tap. The last bit is this little gear bearing bit thing on the top. And there we have a BMW E30 hose reel. Now, if you're new to the channel, this isn't my normal topic. I don't normally make smaller things. I am building an E30 Ute, which is coming along quite nicely, but I am waiting for parts. So if you're interested in seeing an E30 M3 Ute, check out one of my other videos. If you've already been watching the Ute and you've made it this far, thanks for staying. Let me know what you think. Are you interested in seeing odd things made out of BMW parts or even just car parts? If it's something that you don't mind watching, please let me know in the comments, because I have a bunch of ideas of weird things that I want to make. And if it's something you're interested in watching, I'm more than happy to make them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.